Hello everyone and welcome back. Today I've got my AR Performance AR15 rifle here. It's chambered in the 6.8 SPC caliber, and this is the gun that I do my hunting with here in Central Texas. If you want to see those videos, it's on Texas Native 00. And what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you the steps that I take to reload the 6.8 cartridge. Now the 6.8 cartridge is not much different from anything else other than it comes in a couple of different primer sizes, primers being the base. These here are the small primers. Originally it was loaded in the large primer, but I think more commonly now it's in the smaller primer. I think they're getting better performance from the small primer. But anyways, the steps I'm going to go over for reloading are pretty much universal for all reloading rifles in general. Now I've done a couple of reloading videos on the 50 caliber AE that the Desert Eagle shoots, and you can check those out here. I'll put some links down below. And reloading for pistols is slightly different. There's a little less steps, fewer steps involved rather than with the reloading a rifle. And so in this video here, I'm probably going to break it up in two depending on the length, but I'll go over the steps for reloading a rifle. And like I said, these are pretty general steps, so this will probably transfer over to other calibers if you're reloading a rifle or interested into it. So let's get started. Okay, so our first step is going to be to resize the brass and remove the old primer. Now with handgun brass, you really don't need to lube it, but with rifles, you definitely need to lube the case. If you don't lube the case, it's going to get stuck in the die. So what I have here is just an RCBS case lube pad, and it's pretty much just a foam area right here. It's kind of nasty. And then you use some of the case lube, and I'm using RCBS just because that's what I have on hand. I'm not really brand specific to this stuff. If I am, I'll mention it. But you put a little lube on here, and then you take the brass case and you roll it on here just to get it nice and slick. Now you don't want to put too much lube on your casing, because then it tends to, how should we say, accumulate inside the die, and it actually will cause your brass to bend. So you'll see if you see bends or dents, rather, little divots in the neck of your rifle case, you're using too much lube, so be aware of that. So anyways, once you lube it up, then you can put it through the resizing die, and it takes out the primer. And here you go. Here's one that's already been done. And you know, on rifle stuff, sometimes I clean the primer pockets, sometimes I don't. I think it's more critical if you're doing very precision, like bench rest shooting, it might be worth your time to clean out that primer pocket. And there's special tools you can use that'll get out that carbon in there. And I think the thought behind that is it's supposed to give you better consistency for the primer igniting the powder inside, because the hole is maybe less obscured by some kind of carbon buildup. But for me, I don't clean the carbon pockets. I don't clean the carbon out of the primer pockets on my rifles, and I definitely don't do it on the pistols.
I think a back here, little guy, Aiden. I think a back here, little guy. Isn't that a cool name?
Normally I don't trim my brass, at least my pistol brass. I trim all my rifle brass that I reload. And I only reload a few calibers of rifle, and it's mainly for hunting. But I didn't want to spend much money on a trimmer, so I got this Lee zip trimmer, which seems to work pretty well. It's about 20 bucks, I think. Fairly low considering a lot of the alternatives. But it's important to trim rifle brass, especially since these cases that I'm working on are been shot in multiple rifles. Each chamber's cut slightly different, so when you shoot it, you know, the brass expands to the chamber that it's in, so it's going to have a different shape, slightly different shape. So when you resize it, it stretches the brass a little bit longer than it should be. So you need to trim that, get it back down to specs, so that it'll fit in whatever rifle you plan to shoot it in. But this is the Lee zip trimmer. I just screw it in and mount it to my workbench. Trim it to specs using a Lee trimmer that's made for this. I'm shooting, this is the 6.8, in case I failed to mention that earlier. And once you do that, you know, you get a nasty cut around the lip, around the mouth of the case, so you have to deburr it. And that's what I'm using here. I'm using an RCBS deburring tool. It's a time-consuming process, but you know, to load quality ammo for your gun, it's well worth it. Okay, now that we have everything trimmed and deburred, we're going to prime the cases. There's two different ways that I usually do it. It's using the Lee turret press or the Lee auto prime. And this one's pretty nice because you can sit there watching TV and do it, and basically you put the primers in the tray here and the little lever right here seats it for you. It is caliber specific, so you have to buy a shell plate for it, and then it's not the same shell plate that works in your presses. It's just for the auto primer. So I'm going to be doing small rifle primers right now, and I'm testing out these Wolf primers. I hear a lot of people talking, saying they're not bad, they'll work pretty well. So I figured, well, what the heck, you know, I'll give it a try. The price was right. Primers have gotten pretty expensive in recent times, so I bought 100 of these to give it a try, and I haven't heard any really bad things about it yet, so we'll see. So anyways, once you get it in there, it's just like any primer flip tray. You shake them until they get upside down, and then you shake it this way, and you'll see that it falls right into the place right there. So then I'll take my piece of brass, slide it in the little shell holder. And you got to be careful. Some of your brass may be gummed up around the rim, dented. So then you just squeeze the handle right like so, and seats the primer. So there we have it, a nice seated primer. I'll run my finger across the top and make sure that the primer is seated slightly below the case. So you don't want this protruding outward. It could cause some issues for feeding, and maybe even who knows, an accidental discharge with the bolt face. But anyways, I seriously doubt it's going to happen, but just make sure it's seated below. So shake it down again, get the next primer in place, slide your new case in there, squeeze the handle like so, and it seats the primer. So like I said, I like this tool because I can sit there watching TV, you know, kind of get you out of the reloading room for a while, and you know, you can, man, some of these cases, depending on what rifle it was shot out of, they'll get dented up around the brass ring right here. You can maybe kind of see some damage to it, and they stick. So sometimes if it doesn't quite go into the case or the shell plate holder, just turn it until it does, and most likely it's going to fire just fine in the rifle. But you will run across issues like that. I see it all the time with my pistol brass, especially the 9mm. I have a lot of 9mm. As a general rule, when I'm at the range, if I bend over to pick up brass and I pick up something that's not mine, I'll go ahead and keep it anyway. You've already wasted the energy to get it. Might as well just throw it in the bag and sort it out later on. You know, if you end up running too much brass of one kind, you can always trade it to someone else for something that you need.